And so finally, after looking at your overall game, then you're breaking down your game by position, it's important to, well, I guess not finally, but it's also important to break down your game by your hand holding. So, different hand groupings. So I like to look at like small pairs, medium pairs, big pairs, how you're doing with ace-x suited, how you're doing with ace-x offsuit, and things like that. And so basically it can be a pretty good tool to go into the filter and just filter for different hand strengths. So for instance, low pocket pairs. And you can define them differently. Maybe you've got 2s through 7s as low pocket pairs, 2s through 5s. Obviously, the bigger your hand grouping, the more results you'll get per position. But the bigger your grouping is, the less you'll kind of be able to determine what portion of that range is weak or not. So, for instance, if you did all pocket pairs, you probably have pretty strong numbers across all positions, and so you might just conclude that you play all pocket pairs well, when you might be playing big pocket pairs really well and small pocket pairs badly. So by looking at small pocket pairs, you get a lower sample size but a better reading on how you're doing with those hands. And so what you want to do for this is kind of break down, look at overall your numbers for a hand grouping. And then try and look at them by position too. And so as you can see here, like I said, basically speaking, you want your win rate on the button to be higher than early position. And so looking at this small sample size, it looks like we might be overplaying pocket pairs from early position because we're losing from earlier position. So if you think about theoretically, if you're dealt pocket 2s from early position, you could just fold them and you'd have a win rate of 0. So you really shouldn't have a win rate, a non-blind win rate of really less than 0. Again, it's just a small spot where, one time or two times if you get oversetted, it can really skew that. So it's, I would say you're probably plus EV with pocket pairs and 6 max from under the gun, but something to think about and possibly examine further. So what I would do is click on that, look at some big hands, and then look at if I played them fine. It's like if I lost 300 BB pots just because I got oversetted and I only won one big pot when I actually hit a set, then I think it's just kind of sample size. But if you look at you're playing pocket 5s and you're stacking off on an 8-high board when you raise under the gun, then you might be overplaying your hands from early position. And the same token, it looks like on the button, our win rate is somewhat low compared to middle position and the cutoff. So, are we defending too many 3-bets with small pocket pairs and then not playing profitably? Well, we look at first 3-bet fold. Well, we're folding most of the time to a 3-bet, which is it's probably fine because I think it is going to be pretty tough to play a low pocket pair versus a 3-bet, even in position, unless you have a pretty good read on your opponent or you're deep enough where you've got room to maneuver with your sets and try and get a showdown and things like that. So that would be something I would look at. And the same token, like I said, also in the small blind, your maximum loss should be -50 if you fold it every time. So here it looks like it's pretty big a loss for the small blind. So are we playing our pairs too aggressively? If you look at, we're cold calling 40% of the time. So, are we cold calling out of position and just check folding a ton? Or are we cold calling out of position and getting ourselves in tough spots? Putting more money in with weak hands, or check calling flop turn, folding river. So that'd be something I would look at and try and figure out. That might be a possibility. Also, we're 3-betting a high amount, which is, I think, fine, especially 3-betting versus late position raises. I think small pocket pairs are pretty excellent just because, one, cutoff or button opener is likely to fold a lot to a 3-bet, and if they do 4-bet, small pocket pairs are a pretty excellent choice to 5-bet shove. probably know this by now, but if they're stacking off ranges like, let's say, jacks plus ace king, and let's say you've got pocket fours, you've got almost 33% equity. So you got very, very good equity versus most 5-bet stacking off ranges versus your opponents. So they become pretty powerful to 3-bet and 5-bet shove. But and as you can see, this player is taking that strategy, but you want to make sure you're not taking that strategy versus players that just aren't 4-betting light. So you want to review your hands, look at the opponents you're doing it versus, and make sure that you're doing it versus correct opponents and not someone that's like has a 4-bet stat of like 1 or like 4-betting 5% of the time, something like that. So that's important. You want to look at and break it down and just look at further hands, stuff like say, how are we doing with suited aces? And you see overall we're doing well. Winning obviously just makes it important. Small blind, big blind, we're doing better than we should be. We're actually we have a positive win rate in the small blind, which is excellent. And pretty decent all along. Looking at how often we are folding the 3-bets. Again, it's pretty high. So like we're folding the 3-bets with 80% of the time. So like I said before, it's important to not fold to too many 3-bets, but that doesn't extend to specific hand groups because your opponent won't know what hand group you're folding, and so that's an important distinction to make. You shouldn't look at, let's say I'm folding 83% of the time with a suited ace. You shouldn't be like, okay, I need to get down to the mid 60s or low 60s, because your opponent won't know what you have when you fold. It's important as an overall strategy to be probably not in the 80s, but there might be several hands that play better than low suited aces that are better to defend 3-bets with. So basically, as long as your opponent doesn't know what you're folding or can't exploit you because he knows you're folding too much, then you don't have to worry about specific hands folding too much to 3-bets. So I think that's an important distinction to make and something you shouldn't worry too much about. Conversely, like if you fold too many 3-bets on the button, that's something you should worry about because your opponent knows when you're on the button. They don't know what you're folding, but they know what position you're in. So hope that distinction makes sense. But yeah, as you can see, like overall, it looks like we're playing pretty fine. Early position, we are opening just about every suited ace, which is fine. They play pretty well. We look at how often folding the 3-bets and how often we are 4-betting. And that's kind of an interesting spot there. I would think basically we're never, or almost never, 90% of the time we're folding the 3-bets out of position, which is fine. I mean, low suited aces are pretty tough to defend out of position, but a lot of times they play pretty well as hands to 4-bet bluff with, just because given that you've got an ace, it makes it obviously a lot less likely that your opponent has ace king or aces, and so given that your early position raising range should be pretty strong, you should get more credits with your 4-bet bluffs. And so I think that this might be something to look into, where you might be able to 4-bet bluff more with hands like ace-x suited, because you should get more folds due to card removal. And even if your opponent is the type that might flat in position, ace-x suited plays halfway decent in a big pot. And so that's something that I might look at is how you're playing in different situations, and try and spot leaks where you think that you might have more profitable spots. So this might be one of the reasons why we're opening 17% of the time overall, but we're folding to a ton of 3-bets, and it might be a spot where we might